want to just tell you, I wanted to tell you just how much I appreciate you taking your time. Here we are in June, you wound your semesters down and heading into the summer. So I so appreciate you being willing to come and be with us for this hour and a half for this workshop. And I just want to say how timely this issue really is about getting Texans back to work. Couldn't be any more timely to look at our adult population and how we can upskill and reskill them very quickly, how we can leverage what we're already doing in our pathways work and the good work that's happening in adult education all across our state so that we can better get folks back to work. You know that we had over 4 million folks in Texas who registered for unemployment insurance, 4 million people across our state. And those who were hardest hit were those who had the least educational attainment. So we're talking about just large groups of adults all across our states that need us to help them get into programs that are short-term, that are leading towards jobs that are in high demand in our communities and that are leading towards family sustaining wages. And so we're going to be talking today about how we can get people in our communities back to work, how they can earn enough to care for their families so that we can get more people enrolled. You know that our 60 by 30 goal in our state, we're a long way away from reaching enough adults in our state and getting folks enrolled in our colleges. And we want to make sure that we can get Texans the skills they need for high demand work. And so we know that community colleges are the engine for economic recovery. We're already serving over 90% of all workforce education in the state, but we can do more and we need to do more for those in our communities. So I'm so thankful today that Dr. Tamara Clunas and the Amarillo College team have put together a great interactive session for all of us to talk about integrating AEL with our pathways work. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Tamara Clunas and take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. So excited to be here. Partnering with the Texas Success Center is something I always look forward to. So I appreciate Cynthia and her leadership and her team over the years of making sure that this conversation about adult education happens. So Michelle Lamons is the Director of Adult Education at Amarillo College, and Dr. Rachel Juarez-Torres she's here. Thank you, Rachel, for being with us today. And Michelle's going to go over the agenda really quickly, just to frame out our time. And it's interactive, everybody. So we really want you to, I hope you didn't have too heavy of a lunch because we want this to be interactive. The 2 hours will fly by if we all engage and we'll learn so much from each other. Take it away, Michelle.
Had to unmute myself there. Thank you, Dr. Clunas. Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today. We do have a robust session for you. Putting it all together is the name of our session today. And Dr. Clunas is going to just give you a quick welcome and intro here in just a second. But Dr. Juarez-Torres will go over some guided pathways work with all of you. Some framing of that. Then Dr. Clunas and myself will come and just kind of show you all how Amarillo College has been integrating adult education over the last 4 years. I say 4, I think it's been 6. It seems like it's flying by, but about 6 years now. And we'll have a deep dive into some of our strategic planning and how that has affected really utilizing our adult education program in a much more meaningful way. Do a little deep dive into some of the leveraging braided funding through our professional development model, Perkins, and of course, everyone knows about ability to benefit. If you don't, I don't know how you don't. It's been like a hot topic for about 5 years now. It's just constant A to B, A to B. It's a really good pathway to utilize to help our students who do not have those GDs and ESL, still working on their ESL language to get into these pathways and actually for free, basically. And then we're going to go over our crosswalk through the guided pathways, and then we'll end our session with just having some Q&A and have you all ask whatever you'd like to ask, and we'll do our very best to try to give you some, provide those answers. But as Dr. Clunas said, the number one thing that we really want you to do is be engaged. We will do some high engagement strategies, some very interactive strategies with Poll Everywhere. So I will encourage you to please use your cell phones for that, because it'll be better. It won't clog up your screen, so you can continue to watch our presentation clearly. But please be ready, because we will do some high engagement strategies, and I will keep asking all of you to keep to log in, because I know how many of us are in the room. It's like 50 something of us. So I'm hoping that we're going to have a really good time today. And I'm going to give it over to you, Dr. Clunas.
Thanks, Michelle. I want to welcome everyone again. We're about 75 strong, which is really fantastic in June in the summer in higher education and adult education. So this is fantastic. You've heard Amarillo College talk about our integrated system, but today's presentation is going to be more detailed and different in that we've created this crosswalk that we're going to show you how it directly connects to guided pathways. So we're really excited about giving you this different approach to our story around adult education integration. And we're going to also make this template available to you after the session. So adult education is near and dear to my heart. I'm here with two of my amazing friends from Amarillo College. Michelle Lamont has been with our team for many years now in different capacities in adult education, and now she is our director for the program. And then Dr. Juarez Torres, he has been a long-time consultant with us, an excellent contract expert, and you won't find anyone better to talk about guided pathways and lead us through high engagement as we're doing this work. So thank you for joining me today. If you don't know where we're located, I don't make assumptions anymore, okay, that people know where we are on the map. So we just want to show you really quickly where we're situated. We're up there in the Panhandle. 26 counties is our service region for adult education. And so we just wanted to put that out there so you can situate yourselves geographically with our conversation.
And then we'd like to know, where are you from? Where in Texas? I said Amarillo. Where in Texas are you from? So this will be our first interactive strategy. And once we are once you use this, log into this activity, you will not have to log in anymore. You'll be able to, it will advance you through each activity that we have. So just real quickly, if you would pull out your cell phones, go to your web browser, and put in pollev.com/ and then my first full name, Michelle, and then partial of my last name, Lamo, that's an O, and then 990. I see some of you are already clicking, gotten in there. A lot of people from the Austin area.
There's a note to put the address in the chat. Thank you, Brian.
I have 14 of you logged in so far. If I can get you all to continue to participate. Thank you. And how many, Dr. Clunas, did y'all say we have 75 strong so far?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Who's out in the water? Oh, someone changed it. All right, we have. And I'm connecting a lot of these folks have adult education providers in their area, in their service area, if not directly connected to their institution. Just looking at the screen.
Welcome to our Oklahoma.
Oh, Oklahoma. She said that's the problem. Okay. Who knew? All right, well, we're gonna let you guys continue to go ahead and move forward with that. And we're gonna go ahead to our next activity.
Thank you for participating. It's really important. We wanted to see where people were attending from. That context does matter. In that Dallas area in particular, it seems to be pretty dense in North Texas. So thank you for joining.
Absolutely. So we are interested, we would like to know, does your community college have an AEL program or partner with an AEL program? Yes. 91% of you are saying yes. That is very positive.
Mm-hmm.
And then on a scale from 1 to 3, how would you rate the level of AEL integration at your institution? 1 would be 3, fully integrated. That is wonderful. And that's in first place. This is kind of a rating, and it shows us which ones have the most integration as they move up towards the top, or if it's not that integrated, it will rise to the top. So that's positive that the vast majority of us are saying that we are fully integrated.
We'll want to draw from that in the conversations in the chat and then during the Q&A to learn from each other for those that are saying that you're reporting that you're fully integrated.
Nice.
And so is your primary role working with AEL? Those of us in the room? So we currently only have 1 result. If we can get some more of you to respond to that, I'd love to see how many of you are actually working directly with AEL at your institution or organization.
So Michelle, I think it kicked a bunch of people out and is saying that you have to create an account before it'll let you answer that question.
Oh no.
All right. So why don't you just put that in the chat if you're predominantly with adult education as your primary job. So for example, Michelle Lamont is with a community college, but her predominant work day to day is with adult education. Just kind of like to get an idea about that. So we have a lot of people that are saying yes, but we have a good mix, which I think is great. So this session is going to be for everyone regardless, but we wanted to have an idea of where you're situated within your institution.
And then this last one is just saying, rate how familiar you are with the with the guided pathways work.
And if you're not able to participate through poll everywhere, you can type it in the chat. Okay, so we have a mix of people who are very familiar. There's experts in the room in the meeting, and then we have those who are somewhat, and then some that are saying not familiar. So we're going to be laying the foundation this afternoon. around guided pathways, making sure that we are all on the same page about what we're referring to. So for those of you who are familiar with this, we'll be asking, follow Dr. Warris Torres' lead on being able to share some of your expertise in the chat box for those who are not familiar. We want to make sure we don't want to assume anything as it relates to familiarity with this work. It's really critical that we are all on the same page as to what we're exactly referring to when we're talking about the Guided Pathways framework. Now, I also want to introduce myself just a little bit more. In my role at Amarillo College, I'm the Vice President of Academic Affairs, but in all of my professional work prior to, I've always had a heart for adult education, and I've actually worked in adult education programs. But the Guided Pathways is something that is near and dear to my heart. And we could not have, I'll say it, we have the best success center in the country, thanks to the leadership of Dr. Cynthia Farrell. You can just see all the Texas institutions that are being recognized around the around the state for the work that we're doing. I believe that implementing guided pathways, the framework with fidelity and with a deep commitment to data is going to continue to transform Texas higher education in particular. And you would think, though, there's about 1,500 or so community colleges in the country, but I want to say that there are fewer than 500 that are actually implementing the guided pathways framework meaningfully. And so it's still so much work to be done. You're even starting to see universities starting to pick up working through guided pathways. We've received some inquiries from the four-year space, but it is something that I believe is really foundational. I'm excited to see that it's not a fleeting thing. It is here to stay. And so we want to talk about how we can continue to work together and learn from each other to implement guided pathways. But now we're at a crossroads, everyone, of how can we make sure that adult education is at the center of that work, and we'll be talking about that. I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Warris Torres for her to really take you through a 101 and an activity to engage us around guided pathways framework.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Clunas. Good afternoon, everybody across the state. My name is Dr. Rachel Juarez Torres, and I have the pleasure and honor of working with a wonderful team at Amarillo College and the Texas Peer Mentor Network that has been funded by the Texas Workforce Commission as a college integration pathways grant. And just to the last comment that Dr. Clunas made about the four-year space being also involved in this discussion of guided pathways is very true. So I've had the opportunity of being in higher education for 20 years. And I've spent some of my time at four-year institutions. And I've also spent my time, a couple of years at Odessa College. And so that's kind of where I began to make that connection with this idea of adult education and literacy programs and the idea of pathways to student success. And so now I'm back at the four-year university or at a four-year university, and there is still an ongoing, very healthy discussion about how to best serve students who are underprepared for post-secondary education. And that can be at any level, whether it's an AEL student moving into a level 1 certificate, or if it's a student that's moving into an associate's degree or transferring onto a four-year university. And that's kind of where we're starting with in our discussion. And I'm so excited that we have so many experts in the room, so many very familiar names. So hi, y'all. I'm excited to see so many of y'all that I've worked with before over the years to be part of this discussion. So please feel free to chime in as well. The first thing that you'll see on the screen is a working definition of guided pathways. And that is a phrase that was pretty much coined by Bailey, Jaggers, and Jenkins in 2015 as a result of their work in looking at course redesign and the scaling of that model for an entire institution in their book, Redesigning America's Community Colleges, A Clearer Path to Student Success. And so that is definitely something probably as a professional read, a professional study to look at to help better understand this idea of career pathways. But what I would like for us to do right now is to take a look at this definition, and in the chat, type the word or phrase that resonates with you. And as you're doing that, you can have a conversation and we'll monitor and facilitate and pull out some of those key points as we go. Thank you. Wonderful. I've seen guided map, road, absolutely. Efficiently. Yes, institutional, integrated. Absolutely. Student success. One word that keeps popping up is intentional and intentionally. Yes, Marcia, structured. Ooh, I like that, Pamela. From interest to completion. Perfect. Yes. Careers with value. Thank you, Ryan. High quality, Frida. Thank you. Absolutely. I love this. Good. Thank you, Irene. Upward mobility. Awesome. Ooh, for sure, Cindy. Don't leave student success to chance. I love that thinking. We'll take a couple more and then we can maybe someone would like to unmute a risk taker in the group that would like to share a couple of thoughts. Is there a risk taker in our room?
I'll go.
Oh. Thank you.
I was going to say guided pathway that there's a lot of intrusive advising is really keeping those students motivated and checking on them and seeing if they're okay. How are you doing in class? And it's a good, and it's a motivator for the student to know that somebody is there for them as they're completing that guided pathway, that they're what's the word that I'm looking for? Their path as they're wanting to take.
Fantastic. Thank you, Christina. Awesome. Okay, I think Michelle, are you the driver? Okay. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, so taking all of this information, it's almost like we're taking a very whole to piece look at guided pathways. And I wanted to really have this opportunity to make that distinction between just, the career pathway and a guided pathway. A career, they're both of the mantra that is connected to both of these pathways approaches is begin with the end in mind. And so as a student enters a pathway, actually the first dimension is to clarify the pathway, it is to student end goals. So there's that idea of beginning with the end in mind. For so long in the 60s and the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the mantra was access, right? We wanted students to have access to higher education, to college, to university, and that worked great. But then it ended up being more of a cafeteria style experience, and there were just too many choices. And so in the last 10, 15 years, there's been this kind of pullback to say, yes, college going culture matters. We've got to establish that. But it's almost like we have to also keep in mind a college keep going, culture. So the idea of access is the driving force anymore. It's success. And so once we've got the students enrolled, then we need to, as Christina mentioned, kind of focus our efforts on retention and persistence and then completion. So that's really the first dimension of a guided pathway. Now, these ideas come from the American Association of Colleges and Universities that base this model off of the Bailey, Jagers, and Jenkins model of the course of redesigning community colleges. And so that just image there kind of gives you an idea of where we want to start with in our guided pathways discussion. Thank you. Okay. The next dimension is to help students choose and enter a pathway. And so one of the things that I think has been really interesting also is this idea of early college, high school, and dual credit. So there is another population of students who are going to be affected by this move toward guided pathways. There's still that career exploration component that's very much intrinsic to this model, but we have to be as administrators, as instructors, as career navigators, as workforce board, as advisory council people, we need to be very intentional about dimension number 2, which is helping students choose and enter a pathway. And that letter C there, which is an essential practice for this dimension, is accelerated remediation. And so for years, many years, under sort of that old philosophy of teaching and learning in higher ed, it was about developmental education and leveling of courses to see if students could become college ready. But if you pull back and you look at this dimension through the lens of adult education and literacy, you see how nicely and in tandem it works with IETs, how nicely it works with your correct models and what's part of your institution. So once you've begun the journey with your student by providing him or her a map to the end in mind, to their goal, then you can actually, in the second dimension, provide those supports initially to keep them going. All right, the next slide. And then of course, and I think Christina again said it very beautifully, and from the list of the phrases and words that resonated from the definition, there is some intentionality. There is that element of advising, intrusive advising to help students stay on the path. I love that this particular dimension brings in the academic and non-academic supports. So there are opportunities for the entire campus to provide those wraparound supports, everything from financial aid, veterans affairs, the student support group, whether it's tutoring centers, writing centers, that it all works together, that there are no longer opportunities or missed opportunities to help a student succeed. I see some, oh, thank you. Yeah, I see some things popping up in the chat. Yes, the train tracks. And I saw this image and I thought as a student, anymore, we're seeing more and more first generation students of color who have really no idea what the next step is. They've filled out their FAFSA, they've applied to a college, and it's almost like, okay, see you later, hope you make it to the finish line. But when we have this in place, then we know as the conductors, I think I like that metaphor too, that we can help them, guide to them along the path and stay on the path. And then the fourth essential practice of the guided pathways model is to ensure that students are learning. As a teacher, as a professional educator myself, my biggest nightmare is that I sound like Charlie Brown's teacher. If I'm facilitating an assignment or giving a lecture or an activity, if I am so focused on myself as the teacher that I'm losing focus of my students. And so that for me is I think a travesty. It's almost like, the way hospitals are not for the doctors, they're for the patients. Schools, colleges are for our students and not necessarily for all of us on the other side of the podium. And so the learning outcomes align very well with the first dimension of the endpoint. So as you're developing your courses or redesigning your courses, those student learning outcomes are key. That is what's going to drive the curriculum alignment. That is going to drive and help define those apprenticeships and those other projects, internships that are part of your programs. And then, of course, our effective teaching practices. When we're talking about, and the ones that are in the room, we have full integration, not just a mock integration or what I've heard called a pseudo integration of a system within a college. And that's one thing I've seen happen over the years in partnering and working with Dr. Clunas and Michelle at Amarillo College, is that it has been very intentional, systematic, and it has been based on that culture of caring. And so I don't necessarily believe in buy-in as much as I believe in pitch-in. So I feel like that there are so many opportunities for us to work together. And I say us because it will take an us, and to help our students, because I think that's probably the most essential piece of it for me, is that I'm not looking at any student, even if I'm not part of your campus, full-time employee, I know that those are my students. Those are our students that we want to help and see them move and succeed. Are there any questions or comments in the chat to follow up?
I'm wondering, Larissa is asking a question about how, for us to talk about how Dev Ed and adult education can coexist. And I'm going to try to touch on that a bit during our strategic plan time. And then hopefully we can have a more robust conversation, because the whole developmental education thing, we can do a whole session just on that. I will say this, that Amarillo College has not been about trying to have AEL and Dev Ed to coexist. We've been trying to get them to work together more systematically. And so we'll talk more about that. And Larissa, I welcome, if you're open to it, to unmute and kind of expound on what you're wanting to get out of that piece, so that we can make sure we touch on it. If you're open to it, please unmute and share.
Thank you, Dr. Clunas. I was not expecting a platform. Well, I think that inhibits our integration with our college here. And I don't think there has to be a competition, but I think that that's the perception. And I think that that's what's inhibiting the growth forward in that area. Thank you.
Yeah, and I feel like toward the end of our time together, the activity of developing a crosswalk may be that tangible document or artifact that can be leveraged to show or to demonstrate or to almost prove what you were just talking about, Dr. Clunas.
And then I just want to add, because Larissa, I would like to acknowledge, you're not alone with institutions and AEL and Dev Ed having those feelings about each other for whatever reason. I think we experienced a little bit of people thinking that AEL was coming over to take people's jobs. And when you have excellent leadership in place to make sure that everyone has a mutual understanding that we're all on the same pathway, or our goals are all the same, it really does take away some of those fears. So I do want to acknowledge that you're not the only one or institution that was feeling that.
And even in the Amarillo College journey towards this, there a key to being able to have a real effort and chance to integrate adult education into your systems is going to be an acknowledgement that the student population and skill sets of the adult student is often mirrored in the developmental education student. So then how do you figure out who's best suited to handle which skill set of the population? And then how do you do that? And then we can go forward from there. So Larissa, let's keep talking about that. And I'd love to hear from you at the end. You got it, you helped me or not, because we want to make sure that everyone leaves here getting the questions answered, that you leave here learning more, knowing more, and having more tools to be able to do this piece. Now we're getting into the real crux of this. We wanted to make sure we didn't want to assume that we had anyone in this session who that everyone knew about guided pathways, because everybody doesn't. But now we've given you the basic kind of just core fundamentals, and I want to thank Rachel for bringing that forward. But adult education is severely underutilized. And if you could, in the chat box, if you're with a higher education institution, community college, talk to us, let me know if your enrollment is how it was affected during COVID. Did you have a decline? Did you have an increase? Did you stay the same? Because I will say that having done the work pre-COVID with our adult education program really helped to keep people going, because our adult education program was situated and prepared to be able to help students who are trying to come back, who are displaced from jobs. And so we're still expecting that. I see decline just coming through decline. Amarillo College had a decline as well. But I believe that we did not have the most substantial decline that we probably could have had we not, our adult education program really helped us to provide another on-ramp for our students during the most difficult time. And so we're just going to move forward and go and kind of start leading you through the work that we're doing. So I'm going to talk with you. What you see on the screen is the Amarillo College Strategic Plan. And these are the 5 core goals: completion, the labor market, learning, equity, and financial effectiveness. And so I'm going to be talking about, and we're going to lay out for you how Amarillo College has worked with our adult education program around the core goals of the strategic plan. If you are a higher education administrator and you have an adult education program at your institution, and you are not meaningfully engaging them in the center of the academic work, what a missed opportunity. And so I'm going to share with you how we've gone about it. Michelle, were you going to try to say something, add on really quickly before we go on? Okay. All right. So we're going to show you a video really quickly that really lays out for you to hear. I'll say this before we show the video. We can share with you a lot of things, everyone, but you need to have that leadership that's going to guide you through. I've been in the vice president role 4 years. I was a dean at Amarillo College for 6 years. And just yesterday was my 10th anniversary at Amarillo College. I cannot believe that I've been here for 10 years. It's been a wild ride. But watch this video and listen to our president talk about his belief and support of adult education. Then I want you to reflect on your circumstance and see if it compares. We can't hear it, Michelle. Did you share the sound when you shared the screen, Michelle?
Yes, but it's have someone come in and give me a little help. I'm not sure why it's not playing. Hold on just a sec.
While they're working on that, one of the things that, because I really hope that you can hear directly from our president, we talk about this hero leadership. You need a champion. Now, your champion doesn't have to be your president, but you need to have someone who's going to be the champion. And what really has my heart, and the reason why I think this conversation is so vitally important, is because we have adult education directors like Michelle and many others who are holding it down, doing the really hard work, but they're not in the position of leadership to be the decision maker, to be able to move their program from just as great program to an actually systematically integrated aspect of the work. Let's see if they've got it down.
And in our community, our education attainment rates were amongst the lowest in the state, which meant the only sector growth we would have over the next 20 years would be low-skill manual labor. And those jobs are important, but they can't be the foundation of growing and diversifying our economy. When you look at our demographics and you look at our population shifts, even if we had every single high school student in our region that graduated high school and immediately went into a post-secondary credential, we couldn't change our numbers. Our economic future rests on Amarillo College's ability to connect with the adult students in our region that don't have a credential or a skill set for the jobs that pay a living wage. And that's why our adult education literacy program is central to what we're trying to do as a community college, because it's central to what we have to do to save our economy locally, and I would say statewide. That's why integrating AEL, adult education literacy programs, into Amarillo College are foundational. Those students are Amarillo College students. They get an Amarillo College ID. They get advised onto a pathway. They're not a second-class citizen. They're the hope of our community. And at Amarillo College, we've embraced them and our culture of caring and made them central to what we're trying to do to save our local economy.
Dr. Munoz,
Thank you. I have to tell you that Dr. Lowry Hard is a wonderful champion and hero around this work. And so I want you to look at this slide here about the legacy model. See, the legacy model that we normally have seen prior to integration was the adult education program was on the margins. It was on the outside. It was periphery. We talked about it. Oh yes, it's on our website. It's on the brochure. You know, you can come, but it wasn't in the part of the center. The community college mission is there. And what we're trying to talk to you today is about how we've moved and how you can move your adult education program from the margins of your institution to the center of it, working hand in hand with the college. There are resources and support that you can get from the adult education program. In fact, everyone, if you use your adult education program strategically, you can actually help it to push the entire college's transformation work forward, which is what we did. And I'll talk in a little bit how, particularly when it comes to professional development and ensuring students are learning. So let's talk to you about some of the key pieces of how we are integrating, and then we're going to show you a crosswalk on how you can take the college strategic plan and then the requirements of the federal program so you can see just how much they are aligned. We're trying to let you leave here today with tools that you can use to be able to take back your institution. So the one you hear most people talk about is a student ID. And, you know, initially the student ID was symbolic. And Michelle probably can attest to that. The student ID initially was, it was symbolic. It was something you can hang on, but not anymore. At Amarillo College, that student ID is their access to everything that every other student can get. Library services, advising, getting into the LMS, registration, all of that's there for that student. It is the de facto access. And so we make sure that the student has that. And I remember when it was just, I would say, window dressing, where the student had it and it showed the college, because it was all about identification initially. But now that student ID and being in our system is really about core access to where we're going. Then the next area is the LMS. Every single adult education class is in our LMS, which means they're in Blackboard, because that's what Amarillo College uses. Their classes are in the LMS. And when you think about guided pathways and you think about transitioning to college, our adult education students are actually set up better than the student, the first time in college student, because they're getting that ahead of time to be able to be in Blackboard, to have their courses in Blackboard, logging in, using that. Everything is there. We're situating them from the very beginning. From day one, we help them and empower them to be able to be in Blackboard and use it to get to their content, to work with their instructor, to receive tutoring. They can do all of that through the LMS. And then the next area is in the our information management system. We put their scores in, we register them through that system. By doing that, we're able to put them into our data dashboard, which it's almost finished. We wanted to be able to show it to you. We were so excited about it, but we're so close in being able to get that for you. And lots of work has gone into this of being able to make sure that we do that. And then the last area is course registration. Adult education students, we register them just like any other student. We create classes in our information system for them to be able to register for their courses. Now, the students don't register themselves. We register them on the back end, but they're in there. They can get a schedule that's printed for them just like any other student. And one other piece that we didn't talk about is that when we even move to the course registration process for the student, we actually aligned their schedule. And this is something that's really critical. For the longest time, our adult education program had their own schedule, their own timeline, their own calendar. They are fully aligned now with the college's academic calendar. When we start, adult education starts. When we end, the academic semester ends, so does adult education. Michelle, did you want to add anything on to these 4 elements before I move on to talking a little bit more about inclusion?
Yes, I do want to just chime in and say how implementing adult education in these very intentional ways has allowed for our students to really understand that they're not, well, I think maybe a better word is we have, I believe, raised aspirations. Students don't just come here and believe that the only thing that they're coming to do is to complete a GED or to increase their English acquisition. It's really more of, I'm here to transform my life, my family's life, and getting them into these pathways because they are a part of Amarillo College. It almost becomes somewhat second nature that they're not just here for, again, for just what we've traditionally looked at adult education programs for. And really since 2014, since it came under the purview of TWC and transforming into more of a workforce training program, it really does align with that, especially when, I'm not going to just say only when you're at a community college, but it really impacts you differently whenever you're at a community college and sharing that, that same mindset with your students as they're here at the institution. So really I just wanted to share that, how it really does transform students' mindsets and then them aspiring to the guided pathways and career pathways movement.
Mm-hmm. And you know, another critical piece is the fact that when Amarillo College embarked on trying to integrate adult education, we did not have the assistance of the federal program as far as the federal regulations the way we do now. And the federal government is seeing it, and they're actually putting in complementary requirements across the federal program and requirements at the state level for accountability that's actually helping to make these conversations easier and better. We've already been down that road and fought it without it. And so we're actually happy that those of you who are already fully integrated, who are trying to get there, you actually have more resources and tools available to you to embark on this integration work than Amarillo College did when we started. So we're going to try to make sure in this next slide, we're going to show you how Amarillo College has certain strategic plan goals and how the federal program actually works in concert and complements that piece.
And real quick, Dr. Clunas, earlier you alluded to how when COVID hit, adult education was already prepared for some of those things. I just want to elaborate just a little bit. You know, for many of us, we've experienced it. We did not have the tools to continuously enroll our students whenever COVID hit. And one of the things that I've been really proud of adult education, and it would have never happened had we not had the alignment and integration into our institution, but that allowed us to turn from a very paper-based adult education program to transformed us into a digital adult education program. So we were able to, we have our online enrollment forms for our students. So a lot of folks I knew had experienced not being able to enroll their students just based on not having the enrollment form. And that transformation of being fully integrated into the institution was extremely helpful for our program.
And Michelle, it's really critical of what you're saying, because you can have champion leadership, and we're trying to push and advocate for it to go beyond just, it's okay, and we need first steps, you know, for you to get that hero leadership with your administration, and then, you know, being recognized, because it's hard when you're an adult education director and you know you're on the outside looking in, and you know, man, I could assist with that. You know, tag me in, I can help, and then not being called on. But what we're seeing now with COVID and other things is that now it's time to push this envelope of integration even more, and it needs to become fully integrated into the full systems of the college, and that means the data management system. When you start integrating into the learning management and the data management, then you're really setting up where you can really, really be that additional value added to your institution. So let's look at the Amarillo College strategic plan. We have completion as being a goal that we were trying to, Larissa, this is that piece. We have been constantly trying to find a sweet spot for developmental education at Amarillo College. And now we are 100% co-rec institution without restriction. And we now have our adult education program perfectly aligned to take that lower skilled student whose skill would like to get some pre-skill before, but is at zero cost to the student. But then we have the labor market alignment, because I would venture to say, and I welcome anyone to put in the chat box what you think about this, I feel that there may be a revision to the Guided Pathways framework coming. Cynthia, I'd be curious to see what you think, because the Guided Pathways framework has taken us all the way to completion, but the federal government and other expectations of accountability are now really looking at the labor market in meaningful ways. I don't know, maybe there might become 5 pillars to the Guided Pathways framework. But if you look at the initial framework around the 4 pillars, it really stopped at completion, but labor market is equally critical. And then the learning. Amarillo College has an express goal that our students are going to learn. They're going to learn at the highest levels with deep learning and not just that surface learning. So that's another one of our goals. Then equity. We're trying to close the gap of equity and attainment of who we're actually seeing. What does a completion class look like at Amarillo College? We are a majority minority institution. We're a designated Hispanic serving institution. And we want to make sure that the students that are graduating from Amarillo College, that we are uplifting the underrepresented groups traditionally in higher education, that they're graduating. And we're seeing that this is working.
I'd like to just highlight this one with developmental education, contextualize, revise, and contextualize. When I first saw this, the very first thing that I thought about was IBEST and how similar IBEST looks to the new co-requisite model. And sometimes I think about, you know, people being their jobs being utilized differently now. And so I think even with adult education, we have the ability, we've been doing IBEST for some time now. Many institutions have been doing IBEST, and how that back and forth banter to be able to share how we've been doing IBEST, and then also utilizing that at the institution so that they can do this new co-requisite model. I'm not saying that we're doing that here, but I'm just saying that those are just some ideas when you think about how IBEST and co-requisite kind of marriage, they look very similar to some degree, the new co-requisite model. But I just think sometimes we get in our silos and we think, oh, only such and such can do this. But when you think about it, some of these things, like Dr. Kuhn said in the beginning, adult education and developmental education students look very similar with the needs that they have. So I think if we can get into a place where we can kind of understand how we can all come along and assist each other versus someone does something rather than the other person does something, I think we really can get to a place where we can make some progress.
I agree. And I want to say this, that if you're thinking about trying to integrate adult education into your system, or if you're still trying to hold on to what I call the legacy delivery system of this kind of linear path or developmental education, that's not the approach that Amarillo College has used. We have our adult education program serving in that technical education and health science space in those certificates, in those stackable certificates, and they're supporting that developmental education student, providing that supplemental instruction and saving our college dollars because it's the same student, and there are ways to do it where you don't have audit problems. And I'm going to talk about that, particularly when I get to the last part of our strategic plan goals, which is financial effectiveness. And this is really, really critical when we're talking about integration and sharing. We're not just talking about rolling the students into your services and systems. That's important. But I'm talking about that there are ways that you can work together financially that are allowable and will not cause you audit problems on either side of your program or your institution if you do it well and you have a plan. So Michelle, go over how the college's strategic plan goals align with the federal program expectations. This is really, really critical for everyone to see this. We've never really laid it out for you this way.
Right. So whenever we put this together, the very first thing I did was, I already knew that TWC for the AEL side had a strategic plan, but I always tell myself whenever I first initially came to Amarillo Colleges, yes, we are a grant and we have a lot of different targets and compliance measures and things like that to meet. However, we're at an institution where we have, I think Dr. Clunas says it's best, low-hanging fruit to be able to transition students into our community college. And so for me, I always looked at, because I'm here at the college and I've worked at Amarillo College, I want to know what the strategic plan is for Amarillo College. Then looking at, what does TWC say? What does TWC say for the AEL partners? And when I started to look at them and saw how similar they were, and they didn't work together by any means, they didn't work together, but they have very similar goals to meet. And so when I put these on here, it was basic. They have four strategic areas that they are talking about, and you can get this document. It is called the Strategic Plan for Adult Education and Literacy Progress Report 2020. I would encourage you all to go and look at it. It's about a 27-page document, very good information, and have each of you to pull it out and start lining it up with your community college or your organization. If you're a CBO or a education service center or workforce development board, I would take those and line them up to see how you can still meet your overall encompassing goals that align very much aligned to the TWC strategic goals as well. All of these are going to be about, many of them are about career pathways, credentialing, because again, for us, most of this is about getting our students into a pathway and getting them to work and employment. So I would, again, take yours and align it up. But what I'd like to do is just real quick, I'm going to show you, and I don't know how many of you can still utilize the poll everywhere. If you can, go ahead and use it. But I would like for you to just quickly, what jumps out at you that you recognize that aligns to just your, I keep saying Amarillo College, to your community college's strategic plan. You can select one or many or multiple strategies that align to TWC AEL strategic planning.
Michelle, we have a request for you to type in the report you referenced, the 27-page document. Would you please put that in the chat?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Strategy 1, strategy 4. I can't think of a single institution strategic plan that is not, if you're in Texas, that doesn't have a completion because of the state accountability measures of 60 by 30. We all have that requirement of workforce, post-secondary credential attainment. There's just so much opportunity for collaboration. And let me say this, as you continue to respond, please continue to do so. I have talked to frustrated adult education directors and leaders about the lack of inclusion or integration. And I want to say that trying to tackle integration is not something that you can take and go in without a plan. You've got to go in and be able to demonstrate the connections and not just focus on, you can't be emotional or, oh, they don't care about the student, because it's not it. There's so many higher education administrators that simply don't understand the federal program. And even now, Michelle is still trying to educate academic leaders about the work that she does. And some of them come with a little side eye, or, they're a little leery. And we had to tackle that head on. But these types of things, can you imagine how your conversation would be different if you can go in talking about the connection between the strategic plan and you can present a crosswalk? If there's someone who would like to unmute and share, how you see what you're taking away from just this piece of how you might be able to, or how you have tried to have the conversation, we'd love for you to unmute and share that piece for the group, particularly those who said that you are already integrated.
And thank you, Irene. Irene Ramos posted the link to the strategic plan report. Thank you.
Thanks, Irene. Anybody want to unmute and share?
Well, I have a
Love
question,
to.
Dr. Clunas, just as an observation, in looking at the results of that last poll everywhere. There's some, and I'm noticing that strategies 2 and 3 aren't as connected, I guess is the word. Are any thoughts that you have about that at this point?
That's a good point. So strategy 2, and then Marcia, hope you hold your comment. It says addressing demand, implementing strategies that address the projected demand for developmental education, adult education. I think that we're not looking at it from the standpoint, it really is about enrollment. That's all we're talking about. There are so many more millions of adults that need adult education than are being served in Texas. Fewer than 100,000 people are in the federal program, and we have at least 3 million adult learners in Texas that need services. And so probably, I'll be honest, if I were in an adult education program and I went to my institution and said, we need you to support adult education and integrate adult education because more adults need services, that's probably not going to be the entree door, Rachel, to get them in. But going in and saying that the adult education program can help the colleges within. By doing that, you are helping strategy 2, right? But strategy 1, I think, speaks more to the higher education administration. And I want to give Marcia a chance. I thought you were unmuting, Marcia, to share a comment. Okay.
Well,
All
and
right.
let me just add real quick, because one of the things on the addressing demand, it's talking about leveraging resources to increase opportunities. These are some of the highlights that are in the report: closing the gap in referral closing the gaps and leveraging resources to increase opportunities. So I think that we absolutely are the ones who can leverage resources to increase opportunities at our community, for our students overall in general, but then for sure at our community college. And some of the things that we'll talk about later on will be ability to benefit, because that's some of the ways that you can leverage resources to increase opportunities. So I'll leave it at that, and we can move.
What I was saying is, I agree with the students. The strategy is to some commonality. I'm a career navigation assistant. So a lot of students, if they don't feel secure in coming into this type of program, and that as a whole, the AAL program doesn't give them the opportunity for education, for growth, you have to show them that, or give them the appreciative. I'm appreciative of them. I don't want them to feel like a number. I don't want them to feel as if there's just a job. I want them to achieve. So a lot of it is like you said, the workforce is secondary. Get that education. It's important. It'll benefit you. So commonality to me and equity is very important with the student.
Absolutely. Michelle, can you go back to that previous slide really quickly? Because I want to continue to extend this thought and conversation really quickly around strategy 2 and strategy number 3. You know, we continue to have coordination problems just in our community colleges with stakeholders in general, and then trying to bring adult education in makes it even more difficult. And then there are community-based organizations, everybody, that are trying to get at the table with adult education and the community college, and they can't. They're struggling with that. So I just wanted to close a loop on, Rachel, your comment about the fact that strategies 2 and 3, if I were someone that were trying to do it, I can understand why these are the 2 that I'm not going to necessarily really put forward as the key. That 1 and 4 are really great door openers, get you to the table. But yes, I appreciate what you're saying, Marcia, about that. And here's the piece. At Amarillo College, we have multiple on-ramps that should lead into a smooth and seamless system. And, you know, adult education continues to challenge our system about the culture of caring, which is something that we hold near and dear to our heart, and we've been nationally recognized for. But the adult education program with their career navigation system and their wraparound services, when they have loved on that student and then you put them into those college level classes, the adult education student continues to point out weaknesses in our system when it comes to the culture of care and transition of services. So we use it as a litmus test to determine where we have opportunities. And Michelle will tell you that when a student will come and say, hey, I got some love in adult education, but I didn't get love in this class over here. You know, and so we continue to use that as a way to make sure that we are definitely serving students in the full totality of the system. So I appreciate you, Marcia and Rachel, for bringing that piece out. Okay, so when we talk about this last piece about financial effectiveness, this piece is opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. But it requires so much care to make sure that we do not cause problems for our institution. Because if you don't do this part right about financial effectiveness and sharing resources, you could cause problems. I see Kathy Dowdy's comment where she's saying we need systems analysts to bring the organization's tracking systems not budgeted for in adult education or college budgets. And these positions are beginning to be, but cannot be appreciated enough. And you're absolutely correct. We have phenomenal data people, Kathy. Shout out to Austin Community College. And actually Austin Community College is a leader in this work as well. But I want to say that the part that I'm going to talk about, I need everyone to hear me clearly, because I do not want to be the reason why an institution goes and gets in trouble in braiding funding, because you must know what you're doing and you must have the right supports. So I want to say this, that when you look at this slide that I have on the screen, I want you to see the comparisons of the opportunities that we have to share in funding. So adult education instructors need to have high teaching and high engagement, as do the college faculty. And they need to be able to train, to use high engagement practices, and they need to make sure that our students are learning. So on the adult education side, they have required hours, they have requirements around IBEST instruction, and you have to make sure that the students are progressing each year, okay? Amarillo College in the higher education space is not about progressing on a test, it's about progressing and completing. They're the same. You have faculty populations that need to be served. And so Amarillo College works very strategically and deliberately about partnering with adult education in professional learning, where there's an alignment with the program, particularly when it comes to IBEST and co-requisite developmental education. You're missing out on opportunities to collaborate in professional conferences, to be able to collaborate in resources for instructional resources and so forth. But you do have to make sure that you're not just taking a philosophy class, okay, and pairing it with, you know, I'm just gonna say another general education class that's not aligned. They must be aligned together. Putting an adult education instructor with a welding class to support adult education students. Yes, you can do that. Putting a supplemental instructor or an adult education instructor into a computer business class. Yes, those types of pairings matter, but you have to make sure that you're not taking adult education funds and using them in a way that's disallowed, that's going to cause so much headache and pain. And so for Amarillo College, we have someone whose dedicated job is to make sure that we don't make those kind of mistakes. Okay. And in the 6 years that we've had this program, we've been able to do this deliberately to support and pair and allow our faculty who are serving the majority adult education students in the classroom, support that faculty member, that academic faculty member, okay, in professional development and partnering and co-teaching together. And I just want to talk about how important and viable this is. To me, the professional development alignment, particularly in guided pathways, where we're dealing with right now, where learning is the key piece, that we're not just talking about the structural changes, but we're trying to make sure that the students are learning. This is a low-hanging fruit, and it can be done well, and it can be done legally, and it can be done without having audit findings. If you make sure that you're pairing and putting together the right program with the adult education program. Michelle, please extend the thought there as we continue to talk about this.
So one of the things that we try to do, if not annually, biannually, we have IBEST training. We love to invite our content instructors because it makes for a better training whenever you have your content instructor and your IBEST instructor in the exact same training, so that they can continue to collaborate and grow that or develop that relationship and partnership. So IBEST is one of the ways that we really utilize AEL to train for our IETs. Basically, it's really, that's what we're doing. We're training for our IETs. And so that's one way. One of the things that I can say that is the reverse of that is that because we are now completely integrated with our institution, our CTL staff are now developing trainings for our adult ed instructional staff. So one of the things that we highlighted on here is monitoring our MSG reports. So we're backwards mapping this year so that we can better we are able to meet that MSG requirement for TWC. And I'll be honest with you, when I first initially explained that to them, that was like a foreign language. They're like, what, you have to do what? And that's the part that I would say, if there is a hurdle to overcome, it will always be, or for us, it has been translating the language, because the language for higher education is a bit different from the language of the TWC side. And so even myself, I feel like now I'm more bilingual to some degree because I understand the academic side and I understand the TWC side or AEL side. So yeah, we have been able to leverage really each other. We've learned from and with each other, and we're leveraging each other in very meaningful ways in our professional development model.
And I really appreciate this, because in order to continue to make sure that the adult education program has the pipeline of students who are in that pre-IBEST or pre-career pathway space, you know, and to focus on retention, our adult education program is really working and striving to improve that curriculum. And I've got high quality trained faculty, PhDs in this work, who are helping to support them in trying to bring professional learning. And that's at no cost to the adult education program. We're lending our expertise to that program. And then where it's appropriate and where it's allowable cost that's provided by the federal program, we then put those instructors together, the adult education instructor and the content instructor together in the same learning space to learn from each other and to grow from each other. And so it is the same with academic advising, everyone. Career navigators and academic advising systems and duties, they're very similar. They have to work together for that handoff and that baton to happen. You can put your career navigators and your academic advisors for the institution in the same space for professional learning, as long as the goal is about trying to help the adult education student to be able to matriculate and transition into college and to complete and to support them academically. So it requires much. This is not for the novice. You need to know what you're doing. You need to make sure you're talking to the right people. You need to make sure that you have the right compliance protections in place to make sure that you don't go and cause a problem for your academic program, for your institution, or your federal program. But we have a lot of experience with this, and we're saying that if you're willing and open and wanting to learn, it is worth the time and the trouble to do it. We pay, like I said, an FTE to take care of this, to cover us, to make sure that we are fully compliant, but it's well worth it in what happens when it comes to partnerships and collaborations and improving the outcomes for the student. So Michelle, you can go on to the next slide. Now, Perkins, Carl Perkins, I'm just gonna make this really quick. The federal government and the regulations that have come out in the reauthorization around Carl Perkins is continuing to come to the fore, but it still supports this piece about IBEST and integrated training and collaboration. I feel that the way that we're seeing the best opportunity for Perkins is around career exploration and helping students to identify the path that they want to go on to. This is where I'm seeing the best opportunity for collaboration. There are more opportunities that exist, but again, you have to be careful to make sure that you're not going to cause problems. So we play it safe in that regard at our institution, but we do have our adult education students to participate in a huge, what we call a 360 event. It's at the Civic Center, where every academic program community comes together. It's like a huge expo for our students to come in, and we actually have a set time for our adult education students to come in and explore the pathways that we have for them, and that's allowable under the Perkins grant. Again, there are other opportunities that exist around the Perkins grant, but I want to show you ones that are safe, that you can do, that I know you won't cause problems for your institution around this piece. So forgive me if my compliance hat is like on, because the last thing you want to do is to leave and go and cause problems for that. But this piece about helping students, Michelle said it earlier, about raising the aspirations of the students. We do that every single time she has an orientation, because we do have students who come in, they just want to focus on their language skills and they want to focus on getting their credential, and those are honorable goals. But the labor market and our economy and our communities need our adult education students to have more skills. If you're reading the news and hearing this news stories about how much we have a labor shortage going on right now, and we're not just talking about service shortage, we're talking about a huge labor market shortage is coming, and it's going to be around for a while. Adult education is well positioned to try to help to feed into that labor market when we partner together, and Carl Perkins is another one of those opportunities for that collaboration. Michelle, go ahead and talk about the next slide.
Okay, but real quick, I wanted to share with you all this, the 360 event that Dr. Clunas mentioned last year, not last year, year before last, because we didn't get to do it because of COVID, but year before last when we had the event, there was a donor who gave away, I think it was $2,000 for a scholarship. I can't remember the total amount. And just so happened it was one of our AEL students' names went into the exact same bucket as all of the academic students who were there, and one of our AEL students won the scholarship. So it was pretty cool to be a part of that. So here, ability to benefit. This is the one that we have probably been developing for over 3 years now. I feel like we've been doing it. We've been doing it here and there the entire 6 years, but for the last 3 years, we have really developed it to where I believe we have a really good system in place. And so this is a way that you can utilize to help your funding. You can utilize to help your institution to increase not only enrollment, but we utilize our IBEST instruction in this same pathway to ensure that we're having persistence, retention, and completion as well. But earlier I mentioned we start with our CRU, which stands for Career U. This is the name of our adult education program here at Amarillo College. We start with that digital enrollment form, which allows for our students to immediately obtain a ID here at Amarillo College and be placed into our colleague system. We have our career navigators who do most of our class placement for our students, and also stay very connected with those students throughout their first 8 weeks here with us here at Amarillo College. Real quick, our program, we have an 8-week program, and that all students start in our 8-week program. Some will even start in the academic track, depending upon where they land with their first assessment here at our program. But most of our students start during our 8-week program, and during that time, they're having regular meetings with our career navigators who are doing that holistic advising of them. Those students who we have identified are ready to move into the college pathways, they then do the admissions process. And you see that this next slide is highlighted because this is where we actually start utilizing adult education funds, those WIA Title II funds, to pay for our students to go into that career pathway. We have a very close connection with our financial aid director, who is responsible for the release or tracking and release of those ability to benefit funds, which is where it's another place where we're very, very diligent in ensuring that we're following all of the ability to benefit regulations to ensure that our students, before awarded that money, they've completed all the requirements and are eligible for that. They go ahead and apply for FAFSA. And we have a shared document, real quick, we have a shared document we use our cloud-based system here at Amarillo College, which is Google. And we have a shared document between that, our financial aid director, who gives us the go whenever our students are ready to be awarded that money, to be awarded the funding. But we are utilizing that digital form to say, hey, our students just completed this course. She verifies it and she puts it on the sheet as well. Our students during that time, we're ensuring that they're going to pass those classes because we have those IBEST supports that are embedded that we spoke about earlier. It is very important to us that all of our students start off in an IBESted course because it's their first time, and some of them are still taking not only their GED or ESL class, alongside simultaneously in their first academic course. So it's really important that we make sure our students are in an IBESted course. And then after they have successfully completed those 6 semester credit hours, then our financial aid director will release those ability to benefit funds, and it's awarded to them. And this next slide is just showing real quickly, these were our projections. So we want to support our students just like we want to support our college just like the college wants to support us. And so kind of like we're in this dance together. We all of our goals are again pretty much being aligned to the exact same well, we're trying to align our goals to the institutions. And so one of the things that we talked about a year before last was, hey, how many students do we think we can enroll into the institution annually? And we came up with just a number. We said, let's do 200. What does that mean? Enrolling 200 students into our institution based on having the supports of the institution, and then us, Amarillo College, supporting Career at U as well. So that impacts our students, that changes their lives through transformational opportunities. We also impact the institution because we're generating revenue for the institution. And then, but what's most important is the impact on our community, and that's increasing our local gross domestic product by having upskilled workers in our community. This is some projections that you can, not projections, these are some of the results from our 2019-2020 program year. We utilized from adult education, we invested $68,000 into student tuition. If not tuition, it were books, all sorts of things that were allowable costs through being able to support our students. We served over 12,000 students that year. Of those students, 728 of them were high school equivalency students. And of those, Our goal was 200, but we were close. We enrolled 177 students, and of those, 122 of them completed 6 semester credit hours, and 61 of them were awarded ability benefit. Now, I know that's a huge number from 122 to 61. Some of the students, of course, were not, they could not receive ability to benefit because they either certain things, either their financial aid did not go through based on they were not citizens in the U.S. And then also some of those were just students who just decided they weren't ready actually right now. And so they kind of put on hold, on a pause for a little bit. But this is the results that we had. And when you think about this, this was during the pandemic, although it was just the last 3 months of the pandemic for 2020. But this was during the pandemic, and I thought we did pretty well. And here's a quick video for you all to see.
Career Ready U provides support in the form of integrated basic education and skills training. So this is a method by which we're able to have our students learn foundational skills whilst also accruing credits in academic courses towards their credential. We saw the pre-existing need for particular courses where students may be in need of additional support where the content is a little perhaps more difficult. So by having these instructors in the classroom to provide additional support, we are removing barriers for students who may be in need of that extra support instructor, and access to resources. With me being a career navigator as well, being in the classroom with an iBest class, they're also connected to a career navigator.
For the past 3 years, I've been the program coordinator of business technology. It's part of the business department. Before that, I was in computer information systems. So I like bringing a lot of that technology aspect into business technology, because today's business is primarily so heavily dependent on technology. There is that feeling that this job, the admin job, is going away, which is not true. It's just evolving. We have seen that it not only helps the iBest students, it also helps all of the students in the class, because they have this one other person who is in the classroom who they can reach out. Because sometimes they may not identify with the instructor, but they may very well identify with the support instructor, because they feel instructor is coming from a less threatening position, which I don't know why they think that, but they sometimes do benefit from having those two instructors in the same space. It's very clearly identified to the students that we are here to support you, and you need to help us work together.
I've taken the class, I've seen what the struggles are, and I wish to assist you through those struggles where I see that you may need that assistance. Communication between the instructor and the student is critical.
Right now, our college is in an 8-week format, and students sometimes get scared that they may not complete the course successfully.
Specific to business computer information systems and how they explore the programs Excel and Word. Firstly, foundational skills is something that I work on with the student, because before you can truly build a formula, you have to understand the basic math required. Also, just critical thinking skills, as we're breaking down what is it that you wish to have as an end result within this formula or your project, and how do we work towards that. I believe that that's a beneficial skill across the board, and it's transferable. We're all about transferable skills, right? If you're curious about implementing iBest and how to approach this conversation with leadership or perhaps your institution, I think that addressing the need is one of the first areas. Addressing the need of the students. If you find that there is perhaps variable success rates in that course that can use an improvement, this can be used as leverage to have a conversation about, do we need instruction in other areas, support instruction in this class? And how can we go about providing this to students so that we can have the best overall success as an institution? This would definitely be the approach I would take to achieve buy-in and ultimately help the students.
We worked together to come up with that solution, because once we had clearly set our goals for the class, it was easy for us to work together and realizing what is important to catch and help students with in class. That was very critical, and so the fact that we were able to work together was the most critical part of our success story.
Absolutely. Collaboration is key.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna keep myself focused because I
ready, you
want us to
provide
get to the end so we can make sure that we have time for questions. But Ryan's video brings out a couple of things. He talked about leveraging for conversation. So far, we talked about you can leverage your strategic plan because there are connections. You can leverage the funding because there is overlap that's allowable when done right from a compliance standpoint. And then you can leverage share this, but we looked at the preliminary data of students who have been involved in an IBEST program, and the students in the IBEST supported sections are doing better than students who are in non-IBEST sections. You talk about a way to get to the table to talk about the power of adult education collaboration is look at what happens. An adult education collaboration can lead to higher student learning outcomes. You cannot beat that. So we've given you 3 tools so far of ways to leverage this conversation. And I want you to get ready here really soon to unmute and to put in your questions and add to the conversation around those 3 pieces of the strategic plan, the finances, and the learning of where you see the opportunities to collaborate. And Michelle, if you could go back just to the slide where you showed the WIOA, I want to point out one other piece where we're trying to provide an opportunity for collaboration. That one right there. So adult education in the orange where Michelle talked about, this is where they're providing the support. Our goal, Michelle, we set a goal of 200, and I shared that with the president in the cabinet that we wanted to enroll 200 students. Well, the college has greater goals for enrollment now, but her federal program can't fund all of those students to go through the program. So we're working right now. Our regions will consider a proposal this summer so where they will give the students the dual credit rate of $50 a credit hour to get those 6 hours. And so that's going to help her program to be able to enroll more students with her supports instead of paying the published rate. So it will only take $300 of her federal program dollars to get a student to be eligible to apply for federal financial aid. And we'll keep you posted on that through the Texas Success Center and other convenings on whether it gets approved. But we feel really strongly that we're making a great case for our regions to give the adult education student a dual credit rate just for the first 6 hours to give them the best chance of being eligible to go into college. So Michelle, we'll keep going on to now showing the different connections.
Yeah, and so that would mean the 68,000 that was invested last year could potentially be sliced in half based off of the information Dr. Clinton just shared. So this slide, I just want to talk about fairly quickly so that we can get into the crosswalk. We want to have some time to get into that engagement piece and then have some questions. But this really is just a visual about putting it all together and how AEL is aligned to guided pathways. This is just a visual that when I thought about it, putting on the things literally for entering the path, this is from the AEL side, using AELs as a point of entry for entering the path, clarifying this path. Here are some very specific things that can help clarify those paths of utilizing our career navigators. For those of you who are familiar with the ITech plan, it's a goal setting kind of career exploration to some degree plan. Then staying on the path, these are all the things that you can utilize that you probably will need for those students to stay on the path. And then ensuring that students are learning. So for those of you who are not familiar with AEL, we do have a set of content standards that align to the college and career readiness standards as well. And then of course, ensuring that our folks are getting their professional development. And then this MSG reports, all of this kind of comes to the very last piece of that completion piece. TWC has a very robust system in place that really wants to look at those completion rates, rather they are aligned to just total enrollments at your institution or receiving those credentials as well. All right, and we're gonna go into this crosswalk. I think, Dr. Torres, you're gonna start it off with the Texas Success piece, or Dr. Clunas, I'm not sure.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, Dr. Torres, we're gonna have you start off with the session. Go ahead.
Okay, so I just put in the chat the from the previous slide, the addition of that 5th column of completion, but you'll notice that those 4 leading up to that were the 4 dimensions of the guided pathways framework. So identify, clarifying the path, choosing the path, and entering a path, staying on the path, and ensuring students are learning. But if you read this crosswalk left to right, as you're planning for your own institution and your own programs, you'll see that clarifying the path aligns with the Texas Success Center community colleges. Excuse me, I don't mean to, I'm gonna swallow my cough drop. The program maps and the transfer pathways that are part of that initiative. And then looking forward to AEL, career navigation is part of clarifying the path in that realm, and iTech plans also. And then you'll see the last column is where you would, as an institution or as a group, leverage this tool, right? This needs to be a very practical application of the information that you've received today to go back and fill in that spot. So the key or guiding question should be, what is it in your community college that aligns or that would be an example of how you clarify the pathway, and that where you have your program maps, they may be curricular maps, instructional maps. And then also if you're working or you're thinking about aligning your AEL program or actually integrating that with the college, how might you do that at your college, on your campus?
I want to add something here too, that I welcome those who are not necessarily working in adult education, on an everyday piece. But the clarifying the path part is probably the heaviest lift for the community college side. And then the choosing and entering the path is really where, particularly when it comes to the certificate programs and actual courses, that part really is heavy on us. The adult education has come in to help make sure that our certificates worked with their program. The navigators, if you're having problems trying to support students in this work, there is an opportunity to speak up and to have that piece. There was a request from Monica Stansberry to have the crosswalk shared. So I don't know if you guys can do that before the end of the meeting.
If I could, Dr. Clunas, just piggyback very quickly. You mentioned the college side of the, clarifying in the path, and coming from that in a 4-year institution or a 2-year institution on the academic side, I have had recruiters, right? You have a team of recruiters and admissions that may host students coming to campus, and I have had those students that have said, are you really this personable? Are you really somebody that I can come to if I enroll at your institution? Are you really going to be there? And I'll have them say, I've been to 4 or 5 other institutions, or I've been exploring where I might want to register. And it's so just, here's this building, here's the library, and here's where you might go, for finding out, the registrar's office. And so it almost feels like on the college side, if there is sort of this gap, it may be a human resource. And I saw that at Odessa College with the creation of a kind of a people officer, right? A chief people person, right? Officer, someone to provide that, what they call the wow experience. And so that may be a place for the college side to consider with clarifying the path.
I think that's an excellent point. The career navigation aspect and the training and the approach in adult education is amazing. And if you in colleges that have adult education, it's worth looking into the model and how it is implemented in the adult education space in your institution. So I can't say enough about that. I want to talk about the ensuring students are learning here really quickly, because again, there's a learning outcomes, there's assessment, there's so many opportunities for alignment. And Michelle, can you talk about the alignment with adult education in the ensuring students are learning piece and where we are right now?
Yes, so this is where it's been eye-opening for us. And you know, I like to just be as transparent as I can. When I can, it's not necessary to not do that. But you know, one of the areas that we feel like we do well with getting our students to enroll into the institution, and we do well with getting our students to start those credentials. But one of the areas, just as an AEL provider, that it's not just AEL, it's across AEL in Texas, period, having a hard time with completing those measurable skills gains. And so this year we have partnered with our CTL program to do, I think in an earlier slide talked about backwards mapping, aligning with making sure our curriculum is addressing those things, because, you know, it's one thing a student, it's kind of almost like dev ed to some degree. Maybe they don't pass the dev ed part, but they pass the academic part, the part that's probably most meaningful to them, that's important to them. And I think we kind of see a little bit of that in our adult education program, because students aren't necessarily that concerned about passing that, but they're very concerned about completing that credential and moving on to the next step. So we're looking at we're trying to see, is it our curriculum? So we've been able to, again, align with our CTL program this year to really dive in deeply, not only that way, but also to do some retraining and training of our instructional staff to make sure that, you know, we are giving the students what they want. One of Dr. Clunes' favorite sayings is students vote with their feet. And so that piece of ensuring that we can have that persistence and completion piece just based on our curriculum and their experience in the classroom. So our CTL folks are actually working over the summer. We have our first training, and it's a 2-day training, about 8 hours each day, in June, at the end of June, for our very first training that we'll be having, that we've aligned with our CTL people this year.
I want to say this, you know, I don't know, maybe be careful what you ask for, because now that we have a meaningfully integrated adult education at the deep system levels, now Michelle's team is held accountable in a different way to the college and at the cabinet level. What happened to the students that you enrolled? The next question is, are they completing? That's why we have a dashboard. They have to do the same assessment. So, you know, there's that piece, but there's also the high value added of making sure, and I have to say that they have not shied away from being held accountable. But Michelle is now on the curriculum committee for Amarillo College. She is in there listening to new programs and looking for opportunities and partnerships that we knew she could not have if she wasn't on the curriculum committee. She's a member of the Dean Council. So she's in the meetings with the deans, collaborating and talking about academic programming and classes and how we're changing things and academic support. She's right there in the middle of those conversations. She's listening to look for every opportunity to collaborate, and it's going to be easier for her to do that. I share that to say that it's important that if you're going to bring adult education in from a higher education administrator standpoint, you have an obligation to set the adult education program up for success by giving them access to the right people so they can do their job. So you bring them in and say, we're going to integrate you, but then you don't put them at the table with the right people, then that's not fair to the adult education program. I would dare say that it's better to leave them on the margins than to bring them in and not support them, because you're not changing their circumstance. You're just making for frustrated people. And this is about, you know, helping them to be effective and for them to find their happiness. So we want to show you one student who has gone through the process, and then we will have about 10 minutes or so, a little bit over 10 minutes to be able to have a conversation as we close out. And we thank you so much for hanging in with us for 2 hours on a Wednesday afternoon in June, by the way.
I'm Bentley Gamblin. I'm 22. I was born here in Amarillo, Texas. I was a little goofy, red-headed kid with freckles. I was bullied for a majority of my elementary. A lot of it started with my family members. I don't look Mexican at all. I'm a güero with red hair. The worst that it ever got was being pinned down by my shoulders, cut on both sides of my mouth because I made a joke to some bullies. I took a non-traditional track of education. I was 17. I had a son. From that moment, I knew that I had to drop out of high school. I had priorities to take care of, and my father not being in my life as much as he was, I wanted to make an impact in my son's life and be there. Currently, I am taking a college course called Business, Language, and Management. Oh man, it's enlightened me so far already. I'm really excited about that class because at the end of the course of 8 weeks, I believe, I get a certificate. That creates better opportunity for me to have a higher paying job, and the class is setting me up for a lot of things in general. I'm so ready to take that next step and actually get into college courses and do everything that I want to do to get me even closer and closer to my next step. And here, even recently, within the last 8 weeks, I've taken 3 GED ready tests. And I'm actually even waiting on my final GED score right now. I feel accomplished. Being involved here in Amarillo College, setting up pathways for multiple careers has made a huge impact on everything that I've done, especially the teachers here at Amarillo College, Michelle, Ryan, another one of my student advisors, and they were gonna move me along in the fastest way to get me where I needed to be. From where I was to where I am now, I don't think I would have been able to do it without the support of my advisors and Amarillo College's Ready U course. This is more than me. I'm more than you know.
We're excited to be able to share the videos with you. And we want to thank the Texas Workforce Commission for their foresight and leadership and investment in the Texas Peer Mentor Network that is coming to a close from the Amarillo College standpoint of leadership. And we know that they're going to continue to do great things. And Texas is very fortunate to have the Texas Workforce Commission and the Texas Success Center working together. So you have about 13 minutes. We hope that you will, you want to put your question in the chat. I'll turn it over to Michelle because she has a digital way for you to share your questions. Try not to be my old school to counteract her technology.
Well, you say that today, and my digital component is not working as it should. So if it's not working for you, please feel free to put your questions in the chat. If not, you feel free to unmute yourselves. I think we have a small enough group that maybe that might work as well. And just kind of have a two-way conversation with us. But if you can put them in the chat, that I mean in this in the poll everywhere, that would be great. Yes, so that we can kind of keep those questions and answer them and send them out to you as well.
Absolutely. We really want to hear, what inspired you, excites you about what you learned today. What are you taking away? What scares you? This to be real. Let's not act like this is not scary, because it is. It's hard work. The biggest challenge is, I'm just throwing that out there. But let's have a dialogue. Unmute and let's get started. So I can't speak, Monica, about the Texas Peer Mentor Network. I just know that Amarillo College's role in career pathways work for integration and support with Texas Workforce Commission is ending this summer. But I cannot imagine TWC is going to continue. They have a solicitation out, I believe, but Amarillo College just did not submit to continue to be a part of that work. But it's been our distinct pleasure to be a part of it. The last 4 years has been amazing, and TWC has been an amazing partner. Ann, I see Ann is in. If you would like to unmute and share, otherwise don't feel obligated. I just want to make sure that people know that our role in leadership, state leadership, is ending.
Well, this is Kathy from Austin Community College, and I just want to say thank you, Amarillo College, for taking the lead. It was great to be a part of that initiative. But I understand, because it's a lot of work, and I could see it in every time you did that work. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Kathy. Kathy, I know that Austin, you guys have been our inspiration in this work with adult education. What resonated with you about what we presented? Did the crosswalk, any tools that you think you'll be able to take from this work today?
Yes, I was actually preparing a email. My big one is I want dual credit tuition for our ability to benefit students.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the amount of money that can be saved by institutions of, recognizing the adult student, and you're not talking about their entire certificate or their entire college. You're just asking for two courses that can unlock so much more financial aid. I just think that it's such a ROI easy conversation, and please keep me posted on how that conversation goes, and I'll do the same.
And Kathy, I'd like to mention, if I know Houston Community College has been doing that successfully. Their students, I believe, get a 66% discount on their first 2 courses. So they're doing that well. They're doing that also. So you might reach out to them.
Thank you. And I will, it underscores our students need financial assistance. They need it to go the long haul, and anything we can do in the beginning, it's at the core of this work is equity. I mean, and as you mentioned, Dr. Clunas, it's equity for our students, but it's going to, in the long run, build our communities and the economic development of our communities and everyone. And we just need to recognize that and own it. So thank you.
I agree wholeheartedly. We got a few more minutes. We won't hold you just to hold you. But if you have a thought, reaction, we'd love to hear from you. Takeaways, concerns, things to think about. The Texas Success Center, what recommendations would you give to the Texas Success Center as they're taking on this work? I know we have Dr. Farrell, the director of the Texas Success Center, and vice president there. She would love to hear. We have a platform with her for the next few minutes. We should share with her ways we feel that the Texas Success Center can encourage community colleges to support adult education. So I'm sure she's welcome to hear from you as well. This is our opportunity. Dr. Farrell, I think you heard about the equity piece, which I know is near and dear. And if Dr. Farrell, if you have any closing comments, or Christina, we welcome you to share as we wind down.
Yeah, let me invite Christina to go first. Christina, you might say just a word about the labor market data. I know that Tamara made a really great point earlier on in this webinar about the importance of looking at data, our key performance indicators, and even kind of challenged us a bit to say, let's think a little bit further out and how we might even include some labor market data in with the ways that we help encourage not only the conversations around guided pathways, but as we beef up the amount of airtime that adult ed gets on our guided pathways work. And so I invite Christina to say a word about that, and truly want to piggyback on what Tamara said about any feedback that you all want to share with us about how the Success Center can better support this integration of AEL with Guided Pathways. So Christina, please.
Absolutely. At the Texas Success Center, we are constantly evolving our Texas Pathways model. And we are excited that we are building in some true pathways. TRUE stands for Texas Reskilling and Upskilling Through Education. And we've learned a lot through our partnership with AEL and the Texas Peer Mentor Network, Dr. Clunas and Michelle and their team, about what it means to thoughtfully embed workforce training in education. And so we're excited to pull in direct labor market data from each of our college service areas to help our colleges understand how to develop short-term credentials that lead into and embed into their existing programs. We learned a lot through iBest and our collaboration with y'all on how best to do that. And so that's going to be it's starting now with 12 of our colleges and hopefully scaling up to the rest as soon as this fall. And so we look forward to that evolution of our Texas Pathways models to be very labor market informed. But I would just like to say that the Texas Success Center, we value these relationships with our adult education providers. We are building it into our knowledge development as we learn about guided pathways. And so we're excited to continue to collaborate with Michelle as our research fellow and Dr. Clunes as her mentor as we really take some of these lessons y'all have learned and translate them to the rest of the field. So thank you for your expertise, and we promise to engage you as much as we can moving forward as we continually evolve and learn from everything y'all have done.
Exciting things are ahead for sure.
Jay, I see the question. Yes, I'll put a couple links in. I know we have a couple minutes into the chat box, and then we do have information how we've embedded those true micro-credentials into our Texas Pathways framework.
Awesome. Dr. Farrell, we'll give you the last word. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for hosting this important conversation.
Absolutely. And Dr. Clunas, I so appreciate your leadership, and even this line of chat right here is just a testimony to your leadership. And Michelle and Rachel, thank you so very much for building out a model that's exemplary, that it really gives us all inspiration about the ways that we could do better for our students. And so we're going to continue to challenge each other to do that. I so appreciate this network. It's a testimony again that we still have 70 people on the line on Wednesday. So I'm just so impressed with your dedication to each other, to learn from each other. I think that we can continue to look for ways to collaborate and to share. We certainly can do so through our Texas Pathways Institutes, where we're going to double down on our efforts. So just to let everyone know that we have a partnership with Amarillo College, with Dr. Tamara Clunas in particular, to keep bringing these kinds of conversations and these kinds of groups together, so that today's not the only day that we talk about it, but in true sort of Success Center style. If we bring it up and we talk about it, we think it's important, then it's going to be an ongoing conversation. We're going to continue to try to help each other and support each other to act on that. And so one way that for the pathways leads that are on this line still, know that your next opportunity, not only seeing the tools that we're going to post to the website, but also you have opportunity to meet with your coaches, your Texas Pathways coaches this summer. And this would be a perfect opportunity to lay out some of your plans and have a critical friend bounce ideas with you about how you can really move this into action. You can take these tools, you can have the right conversations with the right people, and start making plans for how in the fall you're going to go ahead and start moving into action on doing better for the alignments and the partnerships that we've already built. There's always ways that we can do more for all the Texans around the state who really need us to do so. So I just will end with a special thank you and kudos to Amarillo College, a super thank you to the whole peer networking set of colleges. You all have done phenomenal work, and there's still work to be done. So I appreciate you still leaning into that. Thank you for being a part of this, for being dedicated to guided pathways, to improving what we do. That we never, in Texas, we are not settled. Even though we had top 4 out of the top 10 colleges in America, we had 4 of them that were from Texas. And yet here we sit on a Wednesday afternoon saying, how can we do it better? That is just who we are as Texas. That's who we are as community colleges. And I love being a part of this network with you all. So I'll end there, just say thank you so very much for being a part of this. We're not done yet, and there's more to come. So thank you all.
Thank
Have a good
you.
afternoon.
Bye.